Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this call. You are about to spend the next 50 minutes hearing about what we think is going to be a critically needed function this summer. My name is Ian Rowe. I'm the CEO of Public Prep, which is a network of public charter schools in New York City. We have about 2,000 students in the heart of the South Bronx and the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And like many of the folks on this call, we are now in the third month of distance learning our 2,000 kids, learning an extraordinary amount about how we engage kids in this new normal. And for many of us, we have one foot steeply in the current challenge of distance learning, while also thinking about the fall and all of the scenarios that we are all thinking through in terms of remote learning, hybrid plans, rolling closures due to quarantines. And so we've got these two endposts of the current and the future, but there's this huge gap in the middle, and that is the summer. And for many of us, we know that in the communities that we already serve, summer learning loss is a huge issue. And so an amazing group of educators have come together with the idea to create a national summer school initiative. And then hopefully that's why everyone is here to think about, not only is this a potential crisis in terms of things could get worse this summer because summer camp is closed and summer vacations are not happening. So we'll have tens of millions of kids who are losing out on an opportunity to engage. And so while there is a potential summer loss, we look at this as a massive opportunity to leverage what we're learning now in terms of distance learning to create a really comprehensive 5-week summer learning initiative really driven by master teachers. And so that's what we're going to talk to you about this afternoon. The way we're going to structure this, first, we're scheduled from 4 to 5:30. But we'll really take the time from 4 to 5 o'clock to walk through the overview, the schedule, the estimated costs, just to give you a sense of what the summer school initiative will be. We'll also embed Q&A, but then from 5 to 5:30, if you have to go, that's fine. We'll actually stay on the call for anyone who has more detailed questions, because we know that this is an incredibly accelerated timeline. And so we'll spend the last half an hour with anyone who has more detailed questions, and we're happy to spend that time together. So you should now be seeing on your screen beautiful pictures of kids, because that's what this is all about. That was, before when we could all be together, but we want to create that same kind of excitement and joy over the summer. So we're going to talk about the program overview, who has come together to put together this National Summer School Initiative, the timeline, costs, next steps, and then we'll have Q&A. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, not only is this a new reality for us as schools, it's a new reality for parents, and several polls have been done. You've probably seen these where parents are already concerned, even with the extraordinary efforts that are happening now. Many parents are concerned that their children are falling behind academically. Compound that with potential to lose the summer, and you see that there's just a massive, we think, latent demand for a high quality summer program that's not only academic, focusing on reading and math, but it's got incredible enrichment in terms of science, yoga, movement, which we'll hear a little bit about. And so that's what we are putting together. NWA MAP, many of you may use that assessment tool. They're estimating that even what kids are learning, they're not really retaining. Again, all of this points to an opportunity this summer not to fall behind, but actually to advance not only our kids' learning, but to enhance the capacity of districts and networks and schools to build their ability to be prepared next summer, when we know there has to be some kind of durable remote learning infrastructure. And we think leveraging the summer is a great opportunity to build that muscle with networks, districts, and the like. And as we say, we don't think there's been a greater need for a high quality program. Summer learning loss is a perennial issue. it could be devastating in the current context, and we can create a whole different reality. So with that, let me bring in one of my colleagues, Steve Wilson, who will start describing the elements of the program, and I'll see you in a little bit.
Okay, great, Ian. And let me join Ian in thanking you all for coming today and for this opportunity to discuss with you this program. So essentially, we wish to provide a nationally available, high-quality remote summer school partnership. And this is a chance to bring together masterful teachers in the core subjects and team them up with your strong teachers in the community. So we begin with master teachers who deliver very rich, academically demanding curriculum in ELA and math. And we provide a program of professional development from the Lavinia Group, which is our partner organization. And the Lavinia Group will provide 1 week of intensive training before we launch. We launch on June 29th, so on June 22nd, the week of training would begin. And then every afternoon, through the 5-week course of the program, there would also be an hour and a half of professional development, which is essentially, imagine a national grade team meeting in each grade in ELA and math to prepare for the next day and to look very closely at student work, and more on that in a moment. And delivered in partnership with you. So the master teachers introduce the material and the content, and then there's a cadence of going back and forth between the master teacher and the partner teacher in the community, who provides that sense of community and small group work, checking in with students, providing the emotional and social support that's so vital in this time. And we offer this in grades 3 through 8. So I think on the next slide, we can make this a little bit more clear about how that might work. So what you see here at the top is a master teacher in the grade. They would actually be a math teacher and an ELA teacher, more on that soon. And they would be not teaching in isolation. They'd be working with a fishbowl of students that they would interact with. And these students would come to be known by each of your students in your community for their personalities, their characteristics, and it would be a lively exchange. And then this would be beamed into each one of your classes, which are shown below. We just showed 3 classes. Of course, there'll be classes around the country, each led by a partner teacher and each serving 20, 30 or more students in that virtual room. So that's the essence of it. And the partner teacher starts with a morning meeting, a welcome, a kicking off of the day, and then the master teacher comes on, followed by student work, and the partner teacher is very closely monitoring in real time what students are producing. Because great learning is all about what students, of course, are actually doing and creating in the moment. So now to the next slide, just very briefly on the technologies, you can get a sense of how this actually can come to be. Zoom or similar for video conferencing. And then the master teacher is delivered via a YouTube live stream or recorded video created in a BeLive studio. So high production values of the master teacher and the fishbowl, as we call it. Google Classroom is the learning management system. We make that choice because of its versatility and because it's familiar to so many of the teachers that we will be working with. There'll be other layers of the tech stack, as they say, but I wanted to focus on these 3 basics here. Now, as to the core classes, imagine 3 essential classes in academics: math stories, novel studies, and close reading. In math stories, very briefly, students will be solving a real-world problem. So the master teacher comes on in a very animated way, describes a real-world situation, and the students then, in each individual setting, work to develop their own solution. So they're not applying an algorithm or procedure. This is cognitively guided instruction, meaning that each student applies what they know about math to solve this problem themselves. And then in the discourse section, which is the most exciting part of the lesson in many ways. The master teacher begins the discourse about how different students solve the same problem in different ways. And then that discourse is sustained by the partner teacher with his or her own students. And by that, I mean that a low and a medium and a high level of sophistication solution will be brought out that the students actually produce. And the students who are less advanced in math will be able to see that they could have tapped a more sophisticated solution. And the next time they do it, they'll be ready to leap to that new level of sophistication. It's incredibly powerful. I'll be briefer on the others. Novel studies and close reading are the two ELA modes. Novel studies is just what you imagine, putting students only in front of great books, exceptional books. You know, so often we say students don't get excited about reading, but why would they when they're presented with so many crappy books? Instead, we give them only the best from across traditions and cultures, and it's all about experiencing great writing, developing their own voice, building their own ideas, and engaging with each other on the material. And I would just submit, of course, that a book for the third grade, well chosen, can sustain an hour of incredible discussion that leaves students wanting more, just as well as a sophisticated book in the 12th grade. And then lastly, close reading is children really being detectives, unpacking a piece of writing, whether it's a short nonfiction text, story, and making very close meaning and reading of what they have, understanding the craft and structure moves that the author made, and deepening their understanding by writing about the text. So those are the three things. We chose them because they accommodate a wide range of learners. This is not a remedial program. We don't recommend it be used that way, but nor is it a program just for advanced students. It's really for everyone. And these core classes can accommodate that range. The professional development program I mentioned is so important. That first week is very much focused on setting up for success. We're going to learn the tech stack. We're going to learn how to use the tools. We're going to get ready. We're going to focus on our common purpose and culture. But we're also going to dive very deeply in these three essential pedagogies so that our teachers arrive very well equipped to launch on Monday morning. And I just want to say a little bit about the group that we're working with, which is the Lavinia group. In my own work at Ascend Learning, a network of charter schools in New York City, we were able to move students very rapidly. We went up 40 percentage points in math and 36 percentage points in ELA over a 4-year period because of these methods. And as you'll see on the slide, many other networks have been well served by this partnership and have seen these kinds of extraordinary gains. Achievement First, my colleague Doug, who's on the call with us, Rocket Ship, Public Prep, South Bronx Classical, many others have experienced the power of these really very new methods that we're excited to provide to you at no cost. So you'll see that the essential levers of the professional development exercise and ongoing instruction are three. Teacher intellectual preparation. You know, so often teachers, sometimes by force of circumstance, districts and schools don't provide enough time for this to happen in a structured setting. Teachers look glancingly at the lessons the night before and arrive to class not as well prepared, as deeply engaged in what they are about to teach as they might be. So by setting aside an hour and a half to say, take that poem that you're going to wrestle with, your children are going to wrestle with in close reading, and do that hard intellectual work yourself of finding the deepest meaning of the poem and really getting clear on that. And by the way, you know, we've done these ourselves in trainings, sitting side by side with our teachers, and we're sweating bullets. This is really hard stuff to avoid coming up with what we call a hallmark response. You know, every poem is about perseverance or some such nonsense. To really situate the meaning in the specifics of the poem, to prepare the roadmap of questions by which you guide students to the meaning without relieving them of the hard intellectual work of doing it. That's a very high skill thing. a sustained attention to what students are producing. This is absolutely essential. We can teach it as much as we want, but if they don't know how to do it and don't get it, what have we accomplished? And to make progress, you got to really bore in on student production, and finally, a focus on meaning making. This is not procedural teaching, everyone. This is about inciting curiosity and intellectual passion in our kids. And we won't be satisfied if we haven't achieved that ultimate purpose. Now, Doug is going to lead us through the daily schedule.
Great. My name is Doug McCurry. I'm the co-CEO and superintendent of Achievement First, a network of charter schools in Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New York. And I'm super excited to be with you guys today, and just thankful that you're taking the time to think through this. There's nothing, I believe, more important than us as a nation figuring out how to close the learning gaps that are happening and continuing to happen. So this gives you a high level understanding of the schedule. If you see a given grade of approximately 60 kids would be broken up into two groups, Group A, Group B. The blue is the ELA teacher, the green is the math teacher. So let's just take student group A through the day. They'd start the day with what we're calling celebration, connection, celebration, and challenge time. That's a advisory-like time where we will give a series of prompts and connective activities that teachers can choose from, and then the teachers will also be pulling out ways to celebrate the kids in their class. That is one thing you cannot replicate connection at scale in the same way, and so that's one thing the partner teachers will be doing. Then they'll dive into novel study class, which is amazing literature, and again, that dance between the master teacher and the partner teacher that Stephen talked about, with just incredible literature with Lavinia Group curriculum. Then they would have close reading 3 days a week, and that's the chance to really go deep on a shorter chunk of text and really learn how to be text detectives, which is very exciting. And then have enrichment time 2 days a week. That enrichment is a combination of expertly curated, self-directed sites that we are finding for kids. Like they could go and do an archaeological dig somewhere, or go deep in the Louvre and look at art, and some special activities to go that are more synchronous, like science lab is a really virtual science lab is a perfect example. Kids would have a quick break, then they would have math stories, which again is that rich problem-solving math time where kids really build their, they kind of go to the math gym every day to do that. Then we have movement and mindfulness. That is where we have master teachers in yoga, fitness, dance, and other movement activities that lead that fishbowl group of kids, and then by extension, the broader group of kids through just some world-class movement and mindfulness time. Then the day ends for kids, and teachers have that intellectual preparation time. While that's happening, Group B, we just stagger it to where the math teacher and the ELA teacher aren't teaching at the same time, so that we can keep the individual class sizes ratios lower. And one thing you'll note, the math teacher is less green than there is blue. That's because we've designed it that the math teacher teaches 2 sections of one grade and then 2 sections of another grade. So they may teach 2 groups of 3rd graders and 2 groups of 4th graders, whereas the ELA teacher, because there's 2 classes, close reading and novels, only teach those things twice in one grade. And then in addition to that core day, as we said, we're curating really exceptional enrichment activities, and then we're also partnering with the best in self-directed math and ELA programs that we're both asking and will be nudging kids to do more of that can do before or after the day as well. So that's our core day. We think it's a really strong mix of the kind of academics necessary so kids don't slide behind, but with just kind of amazingly engaging instruction, and then the enrichment and movement that we all also want for our kids to round out just an exceptional summer.
Great. This is Chris Scherf joining in, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We're very, very excited by the possibilities here, and very excited to find a way to work with many of you. My career has been on the the traditional district side, and I only mentioned that I was last superintendent of schools in Newark, and I mention that because we really want this to be available to organizations, whether a CMO, whether a district, or even if their local requirements are met, an organization like a Boys and Girls Club or a YMCA or a Y, et cetera. It's important to sort of set out what we will do and what we are asking our partner organizations to do as well. I should say at the outset that this is philanthropically funded and not for profit. We are busily raising millions of dollars in order to create programming and support that is going to be made available to you all entirely free of charge. What does that mean specifically? We are creating and delivering the ELA and math curricula that Doug and Stephen so ably described. We're building out this enrichment program, which is very near and dear to all of us, in that we understand that the sort of traditional brick and mortar delivery system is very hard to replicate in a virtual environment, but we are very committed to creating a sense of community, a sense of collaboration, a sense of individual engagement with teachers, notwithstanding the fact that the delivery system is virtual. Training is a critical piece of this, not only for the teachers who will be working with students over the summer, but frankly, also for the value it will create for them to bring back into their work in the following fall, and we hope to share with others as well. It really is exemplary training that the Lavinia Group is putting together. We, of course, will provide the professional development focused in the week before we begin, starting on June 22nd, but also in the afternoon or evening, as the case may be, afternoon really, for the daily work getting ready for the next day. We are recruiting some of the best teachers in America. By the way, as an aside, if you have candidates for that, please send them our way. We'll give you some email links at the end. We're calling them master teachers, and they will be on us. In other words, we will cover their salary and cost, and they will be a very central part of the programming as Doug described it. We will also set up the tech stack, the core technology, the operational infrastructure, the platform, the delivery mechanism for getting this out smoothly, securely, appropriate deference to security and privacy requirements. We want to know how well it's working. We'll go into it in some detail if there's interest out there, but we will have a pre and a post assessment as a way to measure impact, as well as an independently funded third-party reviewer of the program as a whole. And lastly, we are very much engaged in, you will be the benefit of, our fundraising efforts to fund all of this. What does this mean for our partners? We should be very clear about this, that this is not a sort of turnkey operation. This is a collaboration, a partnership between all the things that we are able to put together and provide, and the local schools, networks, and organizations with whom we work. So the first piece of that is that the partner teachers will be hired and supported and paid locally by our partners, and we'll get into a little bit of detail around what that means. But one math for every 2 grade levels and 1 ELA teacher for each grade level. That was actually implicit in some of the documents that Doug shared a moment ago. We want to make sure that there is essentially a point of contact, as a supervisor, if you will, often resident within the organization itself, to sort of be sort of the agent in charge, if you will, to be responsible for overseeing the local dimensions of this. That is the making sure that technology is appropriately deployed, making sure that the teachers are hired and prepared, and that all the various daily commitments are indeed met. It is the responsibility of the local partner to assure that students have the required technology, which is very simply access to the internet through essentially any device that may be at their disposal. Chromebooks are great, but it need not be a Chromebook, and to oversee any troubleshooting issues that arise, whether through help desk or some other mechanism. And also to oversee the, the rostering and the assignment to teachers and the rest. So that's essentially what we provide and what we hope our partners will provide in order to create this collaborative endeavor.
And just thank you, Chris. And just to translate that into, to get an order of magnitude of what the costs would be for each partner. Again, it's important to understand, given everything that Chris just mentioned, we're doing significant fundraising so that the core part of this entire endeavor is free to individual districts and networks. So master teachers, the curriculum, the training, all of that infrastructure is provided for you. And this is a nonprofit enterprise, but as Chris said, there are specific costs related to the school, the vast majority related to stipends for partner teachers. So let's go to the next slide. So this is provided for purely illustrative purposes. The costs are really driven at the local level. You have to decide what your per teacher stipends are, but we wanted to give you at least a framework that you could use. So what this lays out is if you were to partner with the National Summer School Initiative, and in this scenario, you were in every single grade. You don't have to participate in the program, you don't have to be in all 6 grades, but this lays out if you had 60 students per grade and 2 sections per grade, as Doug and Chris mentioned, the ratio, or there are 2 ELA teachers and 1 math teacher per grade for those 60 students. And in this particular framework, if you had that number of students in all of these grades, then you would have a total of 9 teachers between ELA and math. And then in the lines below where we see the per teacher stipend, we just give an example. And again, this is purely for illustrative purposes. If you were paying $5,000 a teacher at 9 teachers, $45,000. And as you can see from a cost per student perspective, that's where we think there's potentially incredible value to a district, given the level of learning we think that can be achieved this summer. So again, we can take questions later, and we will send to you this deck so you don't have to rapidly scribble. We'll send this to you. And by the way, I didn't mention it at the beginning, but there is a Q&A function within this webinar. So please, as Michael Carboni and 2 other folks have added, please add questions. We can answer real time, as well as we're going to go back. We've done 2 other webinars, and we're going to take all the questions that we've received and create a consolidated FAQ. We know that there's a tremendous amount of information that we're sharing, but we want to make sure you have all the answers to help you make these decisions relatively rapidly, as we'll soon show with the timeline. But next slide. You've heard from a few folks already that have come together, and really frankly, this is just the tip of the iceberg. You've heard from Chris, Doug, myself, Steve, Lakeisha Young, amazing leader out in Oakland, Tom Torkelson, who used to lead IDEA Public Schools, which is one of the largest networks in the country, Mary Wells at Bellwether. We talked about Aaron Lavinia. And again, there are many, many people who've come together over a short period of time, frankly, just driven by this idea that we know we have either a huge opportunity or a huge loss coming to us over the summer. And we think we can really capitalize and build something special, not only that can serve the students, our goal is at least 10,000 students that we'll be educating this summer, but we know we can make a demonstrable difference, not only in the lives of children this summer, but frankly, what we can learn from all of this to be implemented in the fall. when I think a lot of the lessons learned about how to really run an effective distance learning program can be integrated into all of our fall plans. So next slide, which I think is the timeline slide. Well, it's not shifting for me, but our hope is that the letter of intent, that you indicate your level of interest by May 29th. We know that that's an incredibly aggressive timeline. It's non-binding, but the hope is that we can get a sense of just how many partners are seeking to participate, because then we can ensure that the technology infrastructure that we're building out, the number of master teachers, the number of partner teachers that you've got to hire on your side, just so we've got a much better sense of that as we start to move into the actual planning. As Chris and team mentioned, the timeline is that the initial training is happening June 22nd through the 29th, and then the next week starts the 5 weeks of actual programming. I think we're moving to the next slide. But again, it's an incredibly tight timeline. Why don't we go to the next slide if we can? If not, what we can do is we will send to you the information about emails. We'll be sending you a packet of information, including this deck, as well as other prospective costs. And in the world that we're now living in, my daughter is here and she's saying hi. Hello, everyone. My daughter says hello. The reality of the life we are.
I'm really sorry. My screen froze and I can't go forward with the slides.
No worries.
So I'm going to keep trying.
I could simply narrate the dates so that people have a sense of what we're looking at. So it's rather an aggressive schedule, but forgive us because June 29th is so soon. But basically what we're looking at is trying to get a sense from each of you whether you're interested in the program by May 29th. And then, and at the same date, if possible, giving us a keen sense of the number of students and teachers that you are anticipating, that you would like to participate, and identifying on that date also who will be your lead contact person for our shared project. Then by June 5th, we would love to have from you a rostered list of students and teachers. On June 22nd, a confirmation of tech availability, both for your partner teachers and for students. And then, as I mentioned earlier on, June 22nd is the beginning of the 1 week long required teacher training. I say required because in order to be able to successfully manage the technology and execute the academic program, this week is essential. And then the whole thing kicks off with a bang on June 29th. And along the way, as you go through these weeks, we will provide you with a roadmap of documents to facilitate your process. We will provide you with tools to engage your parents, a letter that can go out to them. We'll provide you with a job description of the partner teacher and all of the elements that you need to navigate this course through to June 29th successfully. So look to us for that, and immediately we can provide you with the very first step, which is our partner guide, which sets out clearly the responsibilities and benefits of our partners in your community, and what we will provide and how that partnership works that we've set out earlier. And we can also provide you with a simple letter of intent that in much more detail, so you can really get the nitty-gritty of how this works. Every little detail of what your obligations would be to operationalize this, and what we would do is set out there. So both of those documents are available for the asking, and then the other ones on this roadmap we will also provide to you on request.
So one thing I would just throw in, this is Chris, just jumping in here, and we're looking forward to answering your questions, is we realize that the schedule here is a little bit immediate, to say the least, and we will do everything in our power to support you in that process, including where relevant, to the extent that you are going to reach out to local philanthropists or funders to support you, which in many cases is not necessary, but in some cases is part of the discussion. We would be more than happy to participate in those discussions if that would be at all helpful to you. And we also are sort of set up to be available and to answer any questions pretty much anytime, anywhere, and to support you in sort of moving this decision through your own process. Just wanted to say that to reflect the degree of excitement we have at the opportunity to collaborate with you.
And now that we've spent so much time talking at you, we'd love to open this up for questions. We can start with the questions that have already been submitted. You know, for example, Angela Martinez has asked, is there a cap to the number of students per partner? No, there is not. It's really ultimately up to you how many partner teachers you'll have. Again, our model is based on about 60 students per grade. You have some flexibility there, but really, you know, Achievement First, I know, Doug, you may want to talk about how many students you think AF will participate this summer.
Yeah, we think we're going to have in the ballpark of 3,000 to 3,500 students happening this summer, and it's a combination. Some schools will have enough kids to like kind of have their own pod, so to speak, but in most cases we're partnering schools up with each other, and in most cases anywhere from a third to half the kids and the eligible grades are going, and we group them up so that we can get the teacher ratios right. But there's a great deal of enthusiasm. We surveyed our parents and kind of briefly described the type of program that we had, and when we surveyed them, 75% of the parents wanted their kids to were interested in the kids attending something like this. And then when we also talk to teachers, I think there's a lot of teachers who are really concerned about where their kids are, and there are also just a lot of teachers who are economically concerned for themselves and their families, who are motivated to also work and get a little extra money over the summer.
Yep. And, you know, someone asked about the daily schedules of 3 teachers over 2 grades. Yeah, there are 2 ELA teachers and 1 math teacher for every 2 grades. So that Andrew McKenzie asked that question. Stephen, do you want to talk? Michael Carboni is asking about will the curriculum actually be available to review prior to launching, so that local districts can ensure alignment, or at least see, you know, what the offerings are that will be embedded in our curriculum? Stephen, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes, we would be happy to do that. We would provide a sample lesson so you can get a sense of pedagogically what it looks like, and a sense of scope and sequence as well.
And Kalila asks, you know, how flexible is the schedule? The schedule itself is relatively fixed. And Chris, I don't know if you want to talk about how it'll be consistent across the country, but it is flexible in the sense of you determine the ratios that you want on a local level, you determine the grades that you want to participate. Right now, it is only restricted to grades 3 through 8. We are looking at potentially partner options, but as you might imagine, this is a massive undertaking. We really want to focus on doing an exceptional job in grades 3 and 8 first, before we take on any other grades for the summer. As it relates to the fall, there's definitely potential to expand the offerings.
Just to reinforce one point that Ian alluded to, this is available in all time zones, just with a different starting time, but the same length of day and the same programming.
Yep. Matthew Levy asked if there's a K2 offering. Not as yet, Matthew, but again, we recognize the importance of providing a K-12 solution. We also want to make sure we provide an exceptional product in the core grades 3 through 8 before we embark upon other grades for the summer. Again, for the fall, there's definitely a greater likelihood of expanding those offerings. How are you handling various school calendars across the country? So it is fixed. The 5-week period is fixed. We try to choose a time frame that would align to most school calendars across the country. It sounds like Mary would like to add on to the answer for Emma.
Oh, I was not actually intending to add on to the answer. You're doing great, Ian.
Got it. Well, so Emma, that's the answer. We think it'll work in Tennessee. We think it'll work in New York. We recognize it doesn't fit perfectly with every single school district, but as you might imagine, calibrating across 50 states and thousands of districts was challenging. But we think it's a good time frame for most districts. Elizabeth Simpkins is asking about standards. Doug, do you want to handle that question in terms of what are we aligning to over the course of the summer? What kind of the power standards we're focused on?
Yes, I mean, we are definitely looking at the tech standards and broader standards, and we will be we can give a more detailed alignment on that. Really, what we're doing is they're backtracking the most important standards that go from there. In reading, it's going to be a ton around the main idea work and the central understanding of the text, especially around close reading and math. It's a heavy focus on the problem solving standards in math, because we know those are the ones that are the most challenging, but we can provide a more detailed follow-up on that, but are very aware that this group in particular, alignment to the tech standards is really important.
Yep. Adriana is asking if the curriculum is free to students, but not free to the organizations wishing to use the curriculum. It is free to students and to the partner organizations. The cost of the curriculum, the cost of the professional development, that's being borne by the National Summer School Initiative, and the only cost to the local partners is primarily the cost of the partner teachers. There is a need for an administrative lead, but that point person could be someone already embedded in your staff. Dana Leisman asks about what's the schedule for the partner teacher training look like in terms of hours. It might be helpful to go back to the schedule slide, Doug, because I think it's really important that folks understand both what an average school day would look like and what the training would look like.
And so the question, can you just restate the question so I know what I'm answering? Yeah.
Yeah, the question is focused, what does the schedule for the partner teacher training look like in terms of hours? So I would answer both the training and
Got it.
the average
Yeah,
school.
on the day, there's training every day, which is at 1 o'clock to 2:30 after school time. And the great thing about that, it's job embedded training. So it's training in intellectual preparation and looking at student work that prepares you to be able to partner teach the next day's lesson. In addition to that week-long, June 22nd to 26th, it's essentially, because it's remote, like 4 75-minute sessions a day that are a combination of getting people ready for the tech stack, the broader kind of mission and vision of what we're trying to do, understanding the core curriculum, and approach of close reading novels and math stories, and doing the intellectual preparation and looking at student work the prep for the next day, and then really kind of practicing a day in the life of a teacher so that they are really familiar with what is going on. Although I'm most excited for the benefit of this for the kids, this is exceptional professional development for teachers. And we think one of the added benefits will be a group of teachers whose skills gets a lot better and are kind of be clamoring and pushing the entire district or network towards better instruction in the future year.
Yep. Thanks, Doug. I think Doug may have to leave pretty soon, and that's okay, Doug. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome.
Michael Carboni asks, are the number of students in your network who can participate limited by the number of staff you're able to provide? For example, if you have 200 families interested, but only 3 staff interested in becoming a partner teacher. So that is a constraint in the sense of this program doesn't work only with master teachers. There have to be local partner teachers. Now, it could be that you're able to recruit partner teachers from outside of your local school environment. That's certainly feasible, but that is a responsibility that the local school system would have to be responsible for.
Ian, I would also introduce the possibility that if there are single schools that are not associated with a common organization, they can team up and combine students and teachers as well, as long as there's a clear point of contact with whom we could effectively work.
Yep. Joanna really likes CGI, but is concerned that that looks like it's the only component of our math instruction. Steve, do you want to just talk about why we're focusing on CGI as the vehicle through which we're focusing in math?
Sure. I think it's a great question, and ordinarily you would surround it with say fluency and other components, but we think that this is the greatest bang for the buck. We're trying to keep the daily schedule manageable. We want it to not be go beyond what is reasonable for summertime and to keep children engaged. And so when we think about math, we think that in this kind of math stories pedagogy with CGI, that's how we can move kids the fastest.
Nicole asks, how do we see out of school time providers playing into this program? So by that question, Nicole, I presume you're referring to what we're calling enrichment. So yoga, science, a lot of the sort of out of school time, because there's both enrichment time embedded in the day. In fact, we're also likely going to have a range of relationships with best in class partners outside of the day. So either before the formal day begins or after school. So outside of the master teachers and then partner teachers, we will have out of school or what we call enrichment providers. I'm hoping that answers your question, Nicole. Stacy Phillips asks, do the partner teachers need to be certified? I don't think we've talked about that explicitly, but I think that's ultimately a decision that is driven at the local level. So that would really be your call, Stacy, to make that decision. Michael Carboni hits the trifecta of questions. You asked, besides the teachers, each partner would be responsible to designate or provide a dean or a point person? Yes. And then hopefully that's someone already existing on your staff, that maybe there's not an incremental cost, or you provide some sort of nominal stipend, but we need a point person that would be our key contact for any communications. And Michael Carboni again. It seems that Bria partners with Lavinia, so wants to make sure that the content would not be redundant to what they're already doing. Want to comment on that, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm going to not say this with 100% certainty, but I am fairly certain that this would not be repetitive with the text that you have seen. But we can get back to you. We'll put the email slide back on the screen, and happy to, if you would be so kind as to write us, we will get back to you with that question. I can say this, that at an absolute minimum, most of the material would be fresh and new.
Yep, thank you, Stephen. Ty Redman asks, it's a really good question, are the grades offering the rising grades? When we say through 8th, that means rising 4th graders through 9th graders. So Ty, thank you for that clarifying question. Miho, hello Miho, how are you? Miho's asking, can summer learning nonprofits, not school systems, be eligible to partner? The answer to that is yes. Boys and Girls Club of America has expressed strong interest in partnering, just given that they are a central institution. They have the ability to connect with partner people who can become partner teachers, and they've got access to kids. And so the answer is yes, for sure. And we'd be excited to have that conversation, Miho. Catherine Wiley is asking, will the novels, math stories be provided virtually? Stephen, I think the answer to that is yes. Do you want to?
Yes, absolutely. All the text and novels would be provided electronically.
Yep. Morgan Levitt is excited about the fall. You were mentioning the fall. What are our plans? For a whole bunch of reasons, we're still developing. We do know that a lot of the both academic and technology infrastructure we're building to support this 5 weeks and summer training, much of that will survive and be extremely useful for the fall. So over the course of the next few weeks, we'll start to reveal more about how this infrastructure can support districts and networks in the fall. But we're not yet ready to share all that, but know that that's something that we think is extremely important. And again, this summer is an opportunity not only to address the issue of summer learning loss for our kids, but to learn a tremendous amount about how we move into what will be an extremely unpredictable environment this fall, but that we think can be enhanced or helped by having a durable national learning system that takes advantage of master teachers and this infrastructure in ways that we think can actually advance learning.
If I can just add to that, Ian, and Chris, you may also want to as well. I think we all recognize the predicament that we're in as we head into September, and in many respects, for children with new concerns about the illness affecting children, the need for high quality instruction has not been greater. And we recognize that only some number of students, of course, can be in the physical buildings at a time. So we hope that with many districts and charter organizations, we will have established a strong relationship, gotten to know each other well through the course of this summer work. And it really will be that partnership that we keep describing. And if folks are interested in sustaining that engagement into the fall and beyond, we would be enormously interested. I should also add that we intend to extend our offerings both down to K through 2 and up through the high school grades as well. Where it's hard to pick which is more exciting, but we have a lot of experience in our team with the K through 2 range, as well as high school, and we only narrowed the grades now so as to keep the initial project more manageable. Ian, you're on mute.
Got it. Sorry. Michelle Hansen is asking a great question, because ultimately, how do we know this has actually yielded student learning? Can we please elaborate on how the pre and post student assessments will be done? Chris, I think you would have referred to this earlier. I know it's still in development, but do you want to share a few thoughts on what we're already?
Sure. And by the way, I love the question, because I remember in my sort of prior posts, if you will, that everyone's got a great idea and a great PowerPoint, but the question I always wanted to know is, does it work, and can you prove it? Can you prove that it works? So I admire the candor and the directness of the question. Here is what we know. We know that the programming and curriculum that was laid out before, as developed by the Lavinia Group and as faithfully implemented by quality partners, has yielded not only gains, but frankly, record gains. I look at, I'll just pick one example, and there are many. I look at the Ascend network of schools in Brooklyn that had the courage to sort of, when the sort of new high stakes test came in the sort of Common Core, post Common Core era, to sort of really rethink everything from soup to nuts to curriculum to programming to pedagogy and so on. and essentially became the pace car of achievement gains in the city, and very, very impressively. So we know that in a metric, measurable way. We also know from research what happens over the summer for kids who are already struggling or already working hard to hold on to the gains. We know that the summer is a critical time, and we know that. And we know that we take outcomes extremely seriously, and we are still working on the design of the pre and the post. We're looking at NWEA as a possibility, but we're also looking at creating our own item bank from valid and reliable sources like Illuminate or others, and putting together something that would be even more telling about the success or not of the program. And lastly, we have used some of our public funds to retain a third-party evaluator, so we'll all know, and we'll publish it and we'll put it out there to let you know what works. I do want to go back to an earlier question very, very briefly. Is, we are, taking one step at a time here, 3rd through 8th, summer school, and so on. And while we, have our hands full getting that done and getting that done well, there is no question in my mind that this fall, every district and network is going to be struggling to provide some version of digital learning to some subset of their population. Ian laid this out comprehensively earlier, and we really do hope, without getting ahead of ourselves, that this will provide the learning and the scaffolding to be something that our partners would be able to use and use appropriately. We need to worry about, all sorts of technical things about how that might work, and we're not in a position to yet make a commitment on our behalf or anyone else's behalf, but that is absolutely our objective in a public policy sense.
Absolutely. And the amazing Mashea Ashton has asked a question important to all of us. Any special training or accommodations, students with disabilities, so English language learners, students with special needs. This is obviously something very important for us. Again, Stephen, do you want to talk about what we have in store for how we're going to be approaching students with special learning needs?
Yes, so I would just say that on our staff and working with us at the Lavinia Group are people with very extensive experience in special education and English learners. We also expect that among our master teachers, we will have teachers who have extensive SPED experience. And they will be ready to work with you as necessary. I think one thing that we haven't given adequate attention to in this conversation is the amount of ongoing interaction that we expect to have with our partners. So it's not just that the video transmission occurs, it's that we're constantly communicating back and forth. What is working, what is not, what adjustments do we need to make, what are we learning today, what's the postmortem on day 1, day 2, et cetera, so that we can keep getting better. And in that same spirit, as you're dealing with special populations, we want to know how we can assist you to make the program as successful as possible. And I would also just add that on your own side, you are free, of course, to choose the staffing that is right for your own needs and population. If you wish to adjust the staffing, the minimum staffing structure that we described to also have special education teachers and others in support of your core teachers, that would, of course, be very welcome. And then lastly, just as I mentioned earlier, the pedagogy is specifically chosen to have the bandwidth to accommodate a wide range of learners and preparation within the same core courses.
Got it. Thank you, Stephen. Jennifer Lindsay asks a clarifying question about the 3rd through 8th curriculum. So again, this is rising 4th through rising 9th graders. So current 3rd through current 8th grade. Thank you for the question. You also asked, is there a way we can share a list of schools by local geography? Certainly, at the point that we are now got locked in partners, we'll share, and if there are opportunities for collaboration, that would be fantastic. Kalila Hoggard asks, can partners do their own enrichment or movement curriculum if they already have programming designed? Again, we haven't really talked about that, but I'm sure the answer to that is yes. We do believe we're going to have some incredible best-in-class partners doing dance, science, And so hopefully you'll have great choices from your own local providers, but that would not prohibit your ability to participate in those elements of the program that make the most sense. Morgan Levitt asks, will the leader point person for our network need to go to the PD week for the teachers, and will those sessions be recorded? I'm assuming the answer is that we will definitely record the sessions. We haven't talked explicitly about the leader point person. We always think it's a good idea for the lead person to know what their faculty are going through, so we'd strongly recommend it, but recognize that that may not be the case or may not be possible in every single situation. So we'll ensure that those sessions are recorded, but it certainly would be, I think, better if the lead person could participate. Eva Pacheco asks, will charters be able to participate individually or CMOs only? Both are welcome. You could be a single site. It doesn't even have to be a charter school. It could be a traditional district school. It can be CMOs. It's really up to you in terms of the ratios that we talked about earlier. Let me just note that it is 5:02. We are happy to stay on through 5:30. If you want to ask more detailed questions, we obviously are very excited to share as much information as possible to get you the information you need to make these decisions. As you can see on your screen, we've put our email information. If you have any additional questions, we are going to follow up from this webinar with the information that we're providing, including this deck. But please feel free to stay or go. We'd love for you to stay to answer any questions you have, but we're here till 5:30. Following up on the last question about enrichment, this is coming from Catherine Wiley. Could we do part of the program, meaning just math or just ELA? Stephen, I know that probably pains your heart to consider that question, but what do you think? I mean, again, we'll be able to share with you the curriculum beforehand so you can make that decision. But I guess ultimately, if that's what a local partner would like to do, they certainly have.
The great news, Ian, is that Doug is no longer on the call, so we're more flexible in how we might answer. No, I think that, look, we would encourage you to do both math and ELA, but I'm not sure that it would be a problem if you chose to do only one. So I think where it gets tricky is if you change around the staffing structure from the model that we described. But if you choose to just do ELA or math and choose specific grades, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah. And Emma Kalana asks a question that I'm sure many people on the phone are considering, which is it possible to opt out for this summer due to the timeline, but opt in if there is a partnership during the school year and next summer? Emma, obviously the answer to that is yes. We would love to figure out a way, though, to make it possible for you to do it this summer if you are interested. So there are a couple of tools we'll be able to send to you. Literally, we can send you presentation decks that you could use internally to present to your leadership, to recruit partner teachers. So whatever we can provide to you to help make those decisions in a rapid time frame, we'd much rather do that. But yes, if you had to opt out, and we do create further opportunities, absolutely. But again, we'd love to figure out a way that you could be in this summer. Is this a general curriculum for grades 3 through 8, or is it scaled for each grade? I mean, it's a customized curriculum. Chris, Stephen, do you want to provide any further color on that?
I don't think I understand the question about scaling. If Kasir could write maybe a bit more on that questions, that would be helpful. It is very clearly a general education curriculum for grades 3 through 8. Got
it. And so Kasir, please add more to the question if that wasn't sufficient. Sarah Gear asks, will there be opportunities for sharing ideas and best practices for motivating student attendance? Absolutely. In fact, the daily sort of national grade team meeting is a fantastic opportunity to do that. Again, it's one of these practices that we think will be phenomenal in terms of what we learn. Just one of the many things that will survive into the fall for how we can share best practices, not only within our virtual school buildings, but across all sorts of dimensions. So yes, Sarah, that will definitely be an interesting part of what we're doing.
And Ian, in addition to the daily 90-minute grade team meetings as a place for sharing and getting to know colleagues across the country, there will also be a live Slack channel or equivalent where we expect to have a very lively ongoing dialogue about what people are experiencing and what they're learning and sharing ideas about the subjects that you mentioned. We want to create a large virtual community that is going through this experience together and sharing their findings.
Yep. Stacy Phillips is asking a good question about requirements for partner teachers. We already mentioned that certification is really up to you, or any other requirements that you're seeking. That's really a local decision. But Stacy is asking, will we have any special ed certified master teachers? In total, we're looking for 12 to 15 of some of the best teachers in the country, and we already have our eyes on several folk who are interested, who are just phenomenal. But do you guys want to talk about the special ed component in terms of criteria for master teachers?
I think we can say with confidence that there will be special education certification in both ELA and math within the master teacher pool. I can't tell you at this point in which grade we'll see it and how many, but it would be highly improbable if those skills were not there.
Yeah. Brett Noble asks, would students need access to the books? I presume, Brett, you're asking, will they need physical access? All of the literature will be delivered virtually. So from a just pure equity perspective, we're making sure that all the literature is accessible online. If there is a way locally to have the book, and you will know what the books are well in advance. So if there is a mechanism to get the books to kids, that's fantastic, but we're ensuring that all of it is available online. We're making it through most of the questions. Matthew Levy, great partner, is asking, how challenging, effective do we think the program will be for schools that do not use the same pedagogy as this program?
That is an excellent question. That's exactly the purpose of Institute, is we're not expecting that our teachers have prior experience with these particular pedagogies. And we will take you all the way through learning how to use these specific techniques. And if I've made them sound more complicated or difficult than they are, then that's, I apologize for that. But no, absolutely, we are going to fully train all partner teachers in the methods in that week, and then there'll be more and more at-bats during the daily PDs. So I don't think anybody should be deterred on your teaching force if these methods are unfamiliar. That's really part of the project, is to spread awareness of these methods.
Yep. Kathy Bant asks, again, probably similar to many folks on the call, she's in a very small district. Would it be feasible to combine grades? I know we had talked about that, and Kathy, unfortunately, we think that that's not going to work. It'd be much better if you could partner with other folks in the district. And Chris, I don't know if you want to talk about why combining grades would be a challenge, but it's something we came to the conclusion was not possible.
It's just a cost issue, honestly. I mean, it would be possible. It just in terms of how the scheduling is organized and how the allocation of work is organized, it just is mechanically very, very difficult. On the other hand, we would certainly be happy to work with you to find additional students who may not be in the district, who may be at a private school, maybe at a community program, and so on, to try to coordinate enough number to make the mechanics of this work.
Yep. Eva Pacheco asked a great question as well. She's from a dual language program, Spanish, And could there be support in terms of Spanish instruction, and or are all documents also in Spanish? The latter is probably easier for us to deliver. We really haven't concluded that yet. So we may have to get back to you, but any initial thoughts on that, Stephen or Chris?
I think on that we should get back rather than risk giving the wrong answer. So allow us to please respond to you in writing to that.
It'd be helpful actually if there was a way that folks on the call, if that would be something that would be value to you in terms of Spanish translation. Differentiation, we talked about a little bit, but Ariel Weisberg has asked the question. Stephen, maybe echo a little bit of some of the things you said before. Can you talk about how differentiation looks? I imagine that's where the partner teacher comes in.
Very much so, and that's the strength of the hybrid structure. So the partner teacher is very much available during all of the cadence of master teaching, student work, discourse, available to work with individual students. So one of the things I think we have not adequately stressed is that the partner teacher can see all the work that each student is producing on screen, and can see the errors that students are making, can see whether they've moved on to the next problem, how many are still working through the previous one, and then they can direct attention to individual students actually in class, through chat or through phone calls, and also outside of class during office hours, reaching out to individual students and families. So that's where that differentiation takes place, as well as the inherent differentiation that students are applying different levels of sophistication to their contributions and work in all three courses.
Great. Sarba, apologies not needed, Sarba, asks on which date does the program end for students? And that date is July 31st. The program for students goes from June 29th through July 31st. And there's a week of professional development for teachers that starts for 1 week, just June 22nd. And is there a post-session reflection or ask of teachers after the program ends? I'm sure we will actually be doing some surveying. We haven't really put that in the calendar per se.
We have anticipated, Ian, that the following day, the Monday after the program ends, would be a day of celebration and reflection.
Sarba, you got your answer. John McBride is asking, interesting question, can they have access to the PD training protocol so that the following year, could the team repeat the program internally? Or are there any thoughts of making this more of a long-term year-over-year program?
So I'm going to take that on, if I might, Ian. So in concept, the answer is yes. There are proprietary issues that are not ours, but are associated with the Lavinia group. So we're certainly not in a position to say that this is in the vernacular OER. It is something that we would need to work carefully with you. I know that they would be very eager to find a way to make that work, but we're not in a position to speak with them about the specifics of the training or the curriculum.
All right, Caitlin Terranova has just asked, we currently use CGI for math in grades K through 3, but not in 4 and up. Would the 4th and 8th grade students be able to access the math content despite not having experienced that form of math instruction previously? And again, I'm sure the answer to that is yes, because unfortunately, as much as we love CGI, we know that many school systems do not use it. So to some degree, we're making the assumption that kids would be coming in without having been familiar with CGI. But Stephen, do you want to embellish on that?
No, I think you got it exactly right. We're not assuming any prior exposure to these methods. We will teach the methods and teach the representations and all the tools that students will use to engage in math.
Yep. And Sarah, oh, sorry we missed it the first time around, but Sarah has reaffirmed her earlier question, which is, Stephen, when you spoke earlier, we made it clear that this is not a remedial program. This is not for only your poorest performing students, nor is it only for your highest performing students. It's for all. But she's concerned about, how do we plan to offer culturally sensitive materials in terms of the novels as one aspect, and just more details on who is the target population, what academic achievement levels are we hoping to see, cultural orientation. Are there any rules or guidelines that we are following in terms of the student demographic?
Yes, it's an important question, and the curriculum is very much intended to represent a diversity of cultural traditions and periods, and to be culturally responsive to the students that we have. And that's always been very important to all of the founders of this organization. So that is a very important part of what we're doing. Our target population is really intended to be students of all backgrounds. We expect that many of our students will come from underserved communities, but we're very eager to have students from independent schools, from religious schools, Catholic schools. This should be a period, I think, in American life where we really all come together to solve immense problems. And so one of the things that we're really most excited about this is that this national initiative would in fact do that we would break down these barriers of, charter, district, urban, rural, et cetera, and bring people together in this common purpose. So we expect that the program will engage students of all backgrounds.
I think we're almost there. Eva Pacheco asks, is there a specific cap in regards to funding for each school? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Eva. There's no, really the amount of funding is related to the number of students that you want to participate in the program, because that affects the number of partner teachers. And as we shared the ratio before, you can really drive that. So I'm hoping that helps to answer your question, but there's no cap that's imposed. It's really up to you in terms of how many kids you'd like to.
So Ian, it might be that there's a slight misunderstanding. We would welcome any number of students from your school system or individual school or charter network. And the more that you can accommodate, the better in our view. We don't charge anything for what we provide, and we will gladly enroll an unlimited number of partner teachers in our professional development activities. The practical limit on how many students you serve is really driven by your budget in providing the summer stipends to those teachers.
Kelly Bowers, thank you, Kelly, for your question, which is really more about the nuts and bolts, Chris. Which party is responsible for data management? And would we manage the database and send data back to the partner schools, or would the partner schools be managing their own data using their own program? So Chris, do you want to, given that we're focused on building the tech infrastructure now?
Sure, I'll be happy to take that on, and I'm imagining that Stephen could add a point or two as well. So, we live in a time where we all need to be extremely responsive to concerns about privacy and security, which is actually quite a well-regulated area. So everything that we're about to say is within the context of adhering to the compliance obligations and the sensitivity to that concern. At the same time, we are all data-driven in our orientation, as I'm sure everybody on this call is as well. And so we want to make sure that we can gather and collect information while guarding PII in a way where we can learn, where we can share, where you can learn. And I believe the data systems, Stephen, you may jump in here, but the data systems that we are incorporating into our tech stack has the capacity to provide a good deal of that as well.
Yeah, I think, first of all, if this is the Kelly Bowers I know, a very warm welcome and nice to see you. I think the way we're looking at this is that we're trying to navigate a number of considerations here, including ease of use, because we have to start very soon. The COPA, FERPA compliance issues that Chris alluded to, and having rich data that both we and our partners can use to analyze achievement and results and student, teacher, and parent satisfaction. The most likely structure at this point will be that data will be resident in Google Classroom, so we will not be asking to engage your data system so as to eliminate those troublesome, legally troublesome ties. We actually don't need to know a lot about your students to be able to launch the program. So most likely, the data that you'll provide us will be very, very minimal, but the data that we produce will be available to you without limitation about the performance of your own students.
All right. I think we actually did address these before, but Kalila had asked earlier, how flexible is the schedule, the program offerings and dosage? I think it's worth us answering it again, which is that the schedule itself is locked in for the day. As we've talked about, there's some components of it. If, for example, if you have your own enrichment, you want to swap in, that's totally feasible. You can choose which grades that you want to participate in. You don't have to participate in all grades 3 through 8. We do think, again, though, that the sweet spot is about 60 students per grade, 2 ELA teachers and 1 math teacher for those 2 grades. But the schedule we've really, and the schedule itself, depending on where you are in the country, there's one, the program is happening at the same literal time all across the country. So it could be 12:15 on the East Coast, and it's happening at 9:15 on the West Coast. So those kinds of things we've locked in. The dates are also locked in. We've made all sorts of, as we said before, concessions in terms of looking at different states, but we think we've chosen the time frame that works best to accommodate as many states as possible. In our last remaining minutes, it's probably, again, even quickly, Stephen, just quickly go over what does the school day look like for the partner teacher, just so that's indelible on folks' minds in terms of what they're asking folks to do.
Yes, so the first thing, and terribly important, is the morning meeting, shown here as Connection, Celebration, and Challenge. This is a responsive classroom type beginning of the day where students feel that they're part of a community, they feel heard, engaged, listened to, supported, and set up for the day. And that's 15 minutes. And then students, depending on which group they're in, which section they're in, would move into novel studies or math stories. And then you could see close reading in one group or enrichment, depending on the day of the week. So 3 days of close reading, 2 days of enrichment, a substantial break, math stories, movement and mindfulness for a full 45 minutes. And then we come to the end of the student day. I think what we haven't mentioned very much of, Ian and my other colleagues, is that there will also be asynchronous learning and asynchronous enrichments available. So a well-curated set of beautiful resources for students to turn to continue to explore new curiosities, new interests after the live portion of the day, or before, depending on where you are in the country. So that's, I think, very, very important. The teacher day, think of it as going from that, in this instance, 9 o'clock to the wrap up of the day at 12:45, and then going directly into this 90-minute PD. And then, of course, you'll have some work involved looking at assignments, preparing for the next day, although a lot of that will have occurred in your PD session. So we're trying to keep the partner day manageable. We know it's the summer. We know we've all been through a brutal school year, and we're going to be super mindful of both doing it right, but also having a manageable summer schedule.
Yep. And I think we've come to our final question. Well, perhaps me who too, but Sophie Kramer, hi Sophie, how are you, is asking, will the master teachers interact with students in any way? And we talked about the master teacher will have their own fishbowl group of students, so they'll be interacting with that group of students, but not directly with the thousands of kids in each of the partner teacher pods. So partner teachers have the real engagement with kids locally. The master teachers have it just with what we call their fishbowl group of students. And this is the last question from Matthew Levy. The kids crave emotional contact. We cannot get 30 kids settled in 30 minutes. How do we do that given that it's hard?
Great question to end on, Ian. Look, I mean, I think building school culture is a long process. We're incredibly difficult times. We're all figuring this out together. I do think that class size has a good deal to do with this, and it's one of the dial setting things that you can do. You could choose to have, if you have a lot of concern about that, which would be totally understandable, choose to have a smaller group size so as to be able to settle the culture and establish it sooner. I would also just submit to you that these are uncommonly engaging pedagogies, and if students are provided exceptional teaching, behavior problems recede. So that is our pledge to you, that you're going to have kids be blown away by what's happening in class, and I think that that'll help in getting kids excited and engaged.
Well, everyone, thank you very much. We are now at 5:27. We're going to wrap up this webinar. Thank you for these incredible questions. Thank you for your commitment, listening for 90 minutes. As you can tell, we've made a huge investment to try and create something very special this summer to do amazing things for kids and districts and families. Not only, again, to benefit the kids this summer, but also engage in a lot of learning that we think will be transferable to the fall. As we mentioned, we will be sending follow-up materials, including these slides, the letter of intent, the partner teacher job description, so you can start socializing that. In the slide deck is the model for how you can estimate costs as well. Any follow-up questions, you see the email addresses, please reach out. We're happy to sit down with you and talk about how to make this happen. Again, we're hoping that letters of intent can be in by May 29th. Again, it's non-binding, but it is helpful to give us a sense of how many districts, how many students are going to want to participate, because that informs the technology infrastructure and academic infrastructure that we build out. So we are incredibly excited, incredibly appreciative that you've taken this time to learn more about the National Summer School Initiative. We are determined to do great things for kids this summer, and we're really excited to partner with you to do just that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you so much.